Now, let me ask you a question. You just mentioned Moors and martyrs. What is the relationship, whether it's etymologically or what have you, between Moors, Moors, and martyrs? What's the relationship?
Well, you're really looking at the MR connection.
Okay.
The consonants of MR, mur. You're going to see MR as it relates. You'll see that repeat itself. Mars. All of that is going to come forward in sound. See, one of the things that I encourage us to do is to study Medunetta as a classical African language.
Yes.
Not like we're going to be talking Medunetta to each other. That's not my point, because I think Kiswahili should be the practical spoken language of African people. But what Medunetta is in its most fundamental form, going back to Brother Dr. Umar Johnson, when he talks about images that are going to come from your senses, we are, this is Kaba talking now. This is my interpretation. I believe that Williams is correct when he talks about we have not yet deciphered Medunetta or hieroglyphs. I do believe he's right. However, we're on a good road now. And people like Jacob Carruthers,
Walter Williams, right?
Yeah, Dr. Walter Williams. I do believe he's correct in that. I do not rest easy thinking we know Medunetta just because we are doing this alphabet thing. But I do believe we're on the right track, and I believe that when we have people like Roosevelt Robinson, when we have people like Rickety Wimby, when we have people like Jacob Carruthers and Asa Hilliard, who have been developing an understanding of this pictographic language, what we're realizing is, for instance, the letter A is symbolized pictographically by the vulture.
Right.
But it's not the letter. And after a while, instead of drawing the vulture every time they wanted to create this concept, they began to draw out a script from the picture that looks like the letter A. The letter M is the owl. There's the script of the M inside the owl's picture. However, when the Kemites saw the vulture, they called the vulture Ah. So the script came from the picture. The picture came from what they called what they were looking at. We have to study Medunetta not by script, but by sound.
Right.
And that's what becomes important, because Medunetta clearly is the fundamental basic way in which the sound was communicated, not by the script. The script is a result of what the sound was, not the other way around. They say ah. No, that's not ah. When you look at the letter A, you say ah. No, when you look at the vulture, you say ah, but the ah became the letter A.
Okay, so the script was the result of what the sound was.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because of the pictograph. They called the vulture ak. When they saw a vulture flying, they said ak. And so they took the sound of what they called a vulture and drew the vulture, and every time they saw the vulture, they said ah. When we look at the letter now, we say ah.
Right.
So it's the phonon, it's the sound that we have to deal with as it relates to understanding the most basic way of communicating. So the same is true when we look at the word like more. Mur is what we're looking for. And that's what was given to people when they said of who these individuals are. They call them Mur. And so Martyr, Maurice, Moro, Maori, all of these MR combinations now bring forward the concept of what they called the people they were dealing with. Same way with Inger.
Right. Inger. Yep, exactly. From Inger, you get Negus and Nagar and things like this, Niger, and the N-word, you get the derivations of it as well. Exactly.
Not just, brother, but let's break it. Nigger.
Yes.
And it's not a bad word. Bad people took a good word and made it bad, just like Hitler took a sacred symbol and made it bad.
Yeah,
but the symbol of the swastika is a sacred symbol in the African and in the Eastern world. A dirty man did horrible things using that symbol as the symbol for his evil deeds. And now that has become a bad symbol, but it's not a bad symbol. It's a good symbol that a bad person used. Just like the word nigger. Nigger is not a bad word. It is a good word that represented leader, Negus, Negusti, Naga, Noki, Nka, because you can substitute K for the G. You can substitute T for the G, and you get Neter, meaning God or spirit. See, we're hooked up with the evil of the Western world. And therefore, everything we do is judged by what their dirty hands did. See, you can take a wonderful thing and throw it in the garbage can. But as you look at that beautiful thing in the garbage can, it is still beautiful. It just happened to be thrown in the garbage can. And the same is true for what the Western world did for the beauty of the ancient world. They dirtied everything. That's the one thing they do well. They take good things and make them dirty.
Right, they corrupted it. Now let me ask you this question. Yeah, let me ask you this question because I'm familiar with the history coming from Inger and Negus and Nagar, things like this. Now, from my understanding, we didn't use the term Negus. Is that when I say that, I'm talking about the ancient times, coming from the derivation of the words Inger, N-G-R, and Negus, things like this. Okay, now what's happening is you're dealing with the words as they go through various languages, and then in various languages the words get altered some. Okay, this is how we get to the derivation of what's known as the N-word or nigger. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's corrupted.
Yes. Now
the sound may change, but the base of it, just like I said, M-R, mer.
Yeah.
There are a lot of. You could put vowels, you could put other consonants, and it will bring the word around. I mean, we did not call each other niggers. That's not how we use the word. We use Inger, Nigeria, Inger. Angola.
Right, exactly.
Or you can go to West Africa, Central Africa. You'll see this combination of sound. See, and again, it's not the letters. It's not N-G-R. It's the sound Inger that you're dealing with.
Because we weren't speaking English, so we didn't have, in our language, we didn't have letters N-G-R. Because that comes from English, which comes from the Latin alphabet, things like this. So we weren't speaking English, but I'm talking about the sound, and I'm putting that sound into the English language and describing it phonetically, so that people listening can understand, what we're talking about. So, see, the point I want to get at is that for the young people listening, I don't want them to think that you're saying go call your teacher a nigger or go call your parents a nigger. See, I want them to understand the history of this, okay? Because what I think we need to do, the hip-hop artists who popularize the N-word, and I do a segment, in some of my presentations where I deal with how we're the only people who can be disrespected in music. See, you can't call other ethnic groups derogatory terms. They won't even let you. That song won't even get put on the CD because the artists don't have the power to greenlight a CD. That comes from what's known as the suits. They call them the suits in the industry. Those are the executives. Okay, they won't even let you do that. You can't call gays all type of derogatory names. You can't call other ethnic groups all type of derogatory names. We're the only people who can be disrespected. Okay, that's a whole nother conversation because that's what you do when you want to destroy a people. You set them up. And see, when you study war, you realize that the enemy puts out propaganda about the people who they're fighting. Okay, they put out misinformation. And as I stated in my presentation with you this past weekend, we have been at war for over 500 years. The problem is everybody knows it except us. Okay, but getting back to my point, what I think needs to happen is that we restore the N-word back to its glory and take it back to Inger or Negus. You see what I'm saying? So instead of brothers running around calling themselves the N-word, we need to take it back to its glory and restore the meaning of the word. Restore it back to Inger and Negus and the meaning of it, and carry ourselves in the tradition of the origins of the word and what it meant. Okay, it meant king. Okay, because many of us were kings. We need to carry ourselves like that, act like that. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I know. You know, that's the point really that I'm also attempting to make when I speak to my young people. And you can go to my YouTube and look up a presentation I did at the college that I taught in New Paltz in New York.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yes.
I'm trying to get the young people to understand the elders, and I'm trying to get the elders to understand the younger.
Yes.
And what I believe is that, you know, like we tell our children sex is bad. No, sex is not bad. It's a very beautiful thing, but abuse of it is not appropriate.
Right.
But we tell our children untruths. We get them enticed to want to participate. And because we're not telling them the truth, it comes with a responsibility. You must conduct yourself with balance and understanding, and that it is a very sacred act. But it's not a bad act, and it's not dirty. And the same is true for the word nigger. I want to tell the young people the truth about the word, but I want them to understand why we have a problem. That's why I always begin with discussing the Jewish relationship with the symbol that is called the swastika. But it's across the ancient world, it is sacred. It means in China, it is the yin and the yang. And it is the law of polarity, the law of balance. It is twinness. It is male-female. It is a spiral galaxy. It's everything wonderful. But in the hands of that dirty man called Adolf Hitler, he murdered people. And as they were going to their chambers, as they were going to their death, that symbol was etched in their minds. And what was once a beautiful symbol became a horrible symbol. And unfortunately, most people can understand that story. That's why I always begin with that story. Because then I'm going to segue into the word nigger. Because nigger was not a bad word in the ancient world. It was a great word. It meant good things. But a premise society took a good thing, and every time one of our ancestors was murdered or beat, or when they wanted their attention, they would call us nigger. They would call our mothers nigger. They would kill us as they were calling us niggers. And so that word has been etched in our minds, like the swastika is to the Jewish person, as a horrible word, because dirty people called us that. So what I want to do is just from ground zero, let's understand each other. I want the younger people to understand that the elder generation went through torture through that word. And if they say to you they don't want that word, they don't like that word, the younger people have to understand that pain. The older generation has to understand that that is not a bad word. And so we have to lighten up also, because I don't believe that any word should be that powerful to conjure up that type of emotion. You could call me that all day long. I don't care. You call me nigger. Because it's not what people call you that's important. It's what you answer to. I don't have a problem with that word. And I would never let a word be that powerful that I'm going to go up into conniptions on it. See, my brother Imhotep,
I'll make my comment after that. Go ahead,
brother. I think that we give too much power to insignificant people.
I agree with
I think we give too much power. Because
we're majoring in the minors. Yeah.
Huh?
I said we're majoring in the minors.
Yeah, if we could brush that word off, they would have no power over us.
Mm-hmm.
Would have no power over us at all if we could brush that word off.
Right.
Because I know one thing. I know that I was once addressed by a group of Italians. When I was in the military, I was addressed by a group of Italians that wanted to be funny, and they wanted to be a joke. And they started calling me nigger, and I started calling them wop and dagger. And all of a sudden, the teacher wanted to stop the conversation. The teacher wasn't willing, and this was a European-American captain in the military. He wasn't willing to stop the conversation when they were calling me nigger, but the moment I started calling them wop and dago, they definitely wanted to stop that conversation. See, I got a derogatory word for every culture that exists on the planet. If you want to go there with me, we can wrestle with the words if you want to do that.
Right.
But you see, the thing is that nigger is the only word that's allowed to be used. And when you look at that presentation that I did at New Paltz, there were many peoples of Spanish-speaking background that were in the audience.
I saw that.
I saw that. Of Hispanic descent. And then all of a sudden, did you hear me when I said, yo, Spick, what's up? I don't know if you saw the group, but the group clenched in their seat.
I saw it. Yep.
You see how you feel now? Well, that's how people feel of African descent when they hear the word nigger. And, after that, some of the students of Hispanic descent came up to me and they said, you know something? Wow, that was powerful. Because what I felt when that word was used, now I understand what African Americans feel, because I felt it. Mm-hmm. You see? And when I used that word against those Italians, they never used that word around me again, because they knew I was willing to go there with them. If you want to go there, we can go there. If you're Irish, I got a word for you. If you're Polish, I got a word for you. If you're Greek, I got a word for you. So don't play derogatory terms with me, because they don't bother me, but they certainly will bother you when I come back at you with them, because, you see, you think you have a right to use those words, and you don't think I have a right to use mine. But guess what? I will do what I want to do with you. Just like you think you can do with me, I'll do with you. They don't like that too much, brother. But going back to the point that I'm really trying to make more than anything else, I don't even like to call Italians, because, there are people of great personality, great character, who are of Italian descent, Polish descent. So I don't like to use those words. But I'm just saying that all cultural groups have their derogatory terms. It's only nigger that's allowed to be used in our songs, in our music, and in our general conversation.
That's what I was saying.
Even Koreans call each other nigger.
I've heard Hispanics. I've seen Hispanics on Facebook call each other N-word. I've heard Arabs do this. And see, what happens is, this is popularized through hip-hop, but what I'm trying to explain to people is this is how information is put out when your opponent is setting you up for destruction. Because, see, when you have massive numbers of incarceration of N-words, then people will say, well, why should we do things so they don't go to prison? They're nothing but N-words anyway. They're no good N-words. Let them. They need to go to prison. And some of these same people go to the polls and vote. So when you have people who develop a right-wing mentality, and it comes time to vote for Pell Grants, it comes time to vote on different issues that will have a positive impact on the African-American community. Well, they say, well, these are nothing but a bunch of N-words anyway. Why should we give them more money? Why should we give them more grants? Things like this. It helps to shape the way people think. And I can't help but go back to one of Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay's lectures, and also in reading Golden Age of the Moor by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. In the 13th century in Spain, when the Moors are losing control and becoming fragmented, in the public edicts, in everyday conversation, different things like this, the Europeans start referring to them as Moristos, which means little Moor. And it's like calling them boy. And there was another term that they used also. It was muliox or something like this. I can't remember the exact name, but it meant the broken ones or the tame ones. Okay, and they started changing the term more was a noble term. Okay, it was a prestigious noble term. They started referring to them as these negative pejorative terms because they're trying to complete the Reconquista, which starts in 722 AD, and they're trying to expel them, to take away their power. So they're trying to change the way that people perceive them, act towards them, look at them, by changing the names that they are referred to as. Okay? So then when I juxtapose that to our condition today, and I look at hip-hop music, which I do like some hip-hop. I grew up listening to hip-hop. And hip-hop today, and actually, people like Professor Grip, he calls this shit-hop. He said, this ain't hip-hop. Okay, so a lot of this stuff is totally different. And there is positive hip-hop out there. It's just most of it's not on the radio. Arrested Development is still out there. Wise, Intelligent, who's with Poor Righteous Teachers. Lin Q is still out there, who was ISIS from the X Clan, things like that. There's still positive hip hop out there. I don't want people to misunderstand. It just is not in heavy rotation on your, Hot 107 or whatever. But when I look at our condition today, I can't help but look back in history and see what happens when negative pejorative terms are put on people who another people want to destroy and take power away from. Go ahead, brother.
No, man, I'm with you, brother.
Yes. So I just want to sum this up. And once again, if you have any questions, give us a call. Area code 914-338-1375. Press the number one key to put you in queue so we can bring you on the air. 914-338-1375. Okay. So I just want to sum this up because because I know we have young people who listen and people download this on iTunes and people listen to the archive episodes. So I don't want children going to their parents saying, Brother Kaba said it's all right for me to call you a nigga. I don't want people to do that. Okay. So what I think we need to do is to take it back to its original form of Inger and Negus. The original form, original meaning, and operate based upon the original meaning of the word as opposed to the de-evolution of the word, okay? And then once again, for those maybe just tuned in late or something like that, give us what the word Inger and Negus actually meant in ancient times.
Well, there are a number of different derivations, but they had positive ideas. Leader, king, Lord of Lords, Spirit.
Yes, Lord of Lords.
It also, as it relates to Naga, when you go into India, that's what they call the snake, a cobra. It was a sacred symbol, and they called it Naga. In Mufaro's Beautiful Daughter, the children's book dealing with Mufaro's beautiful daughter, the prince comes in the form of a snake, and his name is Nyoko. N-K. K can also be Nka, Nga. All of those have different formulations of the word, but they represent things that are powerful, that are princely, that are royal, that is positive. Countries are named after it. Nigeria, Angola, all of these terms come out of that. And on the internet, if anybody's interested, there was a brother that put his research on it. I mean, he did a fantastic job doing his research on it. I will forward to you the article written, as it relates to this word, so that you can get a better sense of the linguistical term. But the main thing I'm trying to tell our young people is I am not attempting in any way, shape, form to give you permission to use the word. I am not saying that I said that you can use it because it's a good word. No more than anybody would tell someone you can now use the swastika when you go into the synagogue. It has put an indelible mark on the minds of people. It has been robbed of its beauty.
Right.
And so I am not in any way, shape, form telling people that you can use the word. What I'm attempting to get us to do is to look at the history of the word and be able to move from that point on.
Absolutely.
And that's what's important to me, Brother Imhotep. I'm not giving anybody permission because I know that it sends chills up the spines of so many elders and so many people in general, even to the young black folk. Young Africans will tell you, I can use the word, but don't let no white boy use it.
Right, exactly.
It is still off limits. White people keep
Bro.
coming up with the concept, well, you use it, why can't I? Well, you're stupid. You can't use it. It's simple like that. Because when a black person uses it, it's like Jewish people who tell jokes about Judaism. Nobody cracks on Jews more in comedy than other Jews. But let a black person crack like that, you're in trouble. You're anti-Semitic.
Right, exactly.
You can't do what Jewish people do as it relates to Jewish people, because Jewish people say, well, he's Jewish. So if he's going to put down Jews, he's putting himself down. Well, when black people use the word, if it is a bad word, black people are going to put themselves down because you are black. You are the entity upon which you're joking. So you're putting yourself in that category.
Right.
But other people from other cultures can't use that word, but they keep trying to say, "Well, if you use it, why can't I?" Like, that guy with the crazy Don, whatever his name is. When he was speaking about the all-female basketball team, called them nappy-headed hoes.
Yeah, not Don Imus. But recently, just in the last month, Rush Limbaugh said that he can use the N-word because rappers use it. He said he can use it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he actually tried to do it. but let me tell you something.
This is the mentality that you have out here. So with that flood of ignorance, what I'm attempting to do as just someone looking at the history of it, I am saying, let us just look at the history of it, and then let's move from there. But let us not get emotional about a scientific reality. If I would not want to use that word, I do not use that word in public. I do not use that word as a term of endearment because I know what that word means. I grew up in that generation. So I know what that word means. And out of respect for the pain that I would cause other folk, I don't use it. But I know the history of the word. And that's what I'm asking us to consider. I'm asking the younger to understand the elder, and I'm asking the elder to understand the younger. That's really what I'm saying. I give nobody permission to use that word. It causes pain. It causes emotional pain.
Right, exactly.
So I want to be very clear, and that's what I try to be clear when I speak to young people about the word. Randall Kennedy wrote a great book on nigger. In fact, that's what he titled it. And Dick Gregory also wrote a book on nigger.
Yeah.
In fact, he titled the book.
That was like
I'm encouraging us to do this scholastically. Don't approach it emotionally. Approach it scholastically, and then make your decision. I made a decision. I don't use the word. I used it this evening, and I use it as it relates to the conversation because, you see, it is hard for me to say I have a problem with the N-word because I don't have a problem with the N-word. I have a problem with the word nigger. And just like I don't use the word B-word. When I'm talking to our young people, I specifically say, bitch. Because that's what I have a problem with, not the B word. We're tiptoeing around issues when we got to get right to the heart of the matter. You see, man, I don't take names, and I don't take prisoners of war. You see, and we have to approach this in a very open, powerful way for our young people to really and truly understand this. You know, like I tell you in that piece that I did in New Paltz, I mean, when my students in the 8th grade used to come into my classroom, I don't know if we can use those types of words, in the African History Network.
Yeah, you can. You can.
I mean, like I've had young women, walk in, and they say, "Suck my dick, motherfucker." Biologically impossible.
Correct. Unless they are a hermaphrodite, or
and even at that, I would wonder. Do you really know what these words mean? Do you know the history of these words? What etymologically does that mean? And like I say in that presentation, when I sat down and spoke to my 8th grade class, specifically to the young lady that walked into the class and told her female friend, "Suck my dick, motherfucker."
Right.
I said, your girlfriend can't even be a motherfucker because she don't have the necessary biological equipment to fuck her mother. And that's just, they said, did you hear what Brother Kaba said? Mm-hmm. And so we started a dialogue in that classroom. Right. Because they use that word amongst themselves all the time. I said, now, you go out there and you tell your parents and people that we had this kind of conversation, you know I'm going to be in trouble. But Brother Kaba, I'm trying to keep it real. I'm not playing with you. If you're going to use these words, and if you're going to come into my room and talk like that, I demand that you know what you're talking about. Otherwise, don't use those words. I ain't saying you can't use them. I don't care. Just know what you're talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, don't come up in my classroom talking nonsense.
Right.
And I did not curse. Use those words within the lesson itself. Brother, let me tell you something. That was a morning 8th grade. I had an afternoon 8th grade after lunch. And when that second 8th grade came into my classroom, they said, no, Brother Kaba, we heard what happened in that other class.
Right.
You got to have a conversation with us about motherfucker.
Right. And I've heard Dick Gregory talk about it because I heard, you talk about it in a minute. I want you just to briefly get into the origin of the word MF. But, Dick Gregory talked about how back during slavery, when they wanted to have, more slaves and they want to do it in a cheap way, they would take the male slave and put a bag over his head and make him have sex with his mother and produce a child. And also coming from that is the origin of the dozens, because he said it wasn't until about 1875 that they realized that when you have interbreeding between a parent and their offspring, or even interbreeding between siblings, things like this will cause defects. So oftentimes what would happen was that when the son would have sex with his mother to produce that child would come out deformed. And you couldn't sell that deformed slave didn't bring the same price as a healthy slave. So the deformed slaves and those that were deformed for whatever reasons, things like this, they would be sold to poor whites who wanted slaves, but you had to buy them by the dozen. And he said this is why when people would play the dozens, like African-American children basically would play the dozens, the insult was to the mother. Usually the insult historically wasn't to the father, it was to the mother, because it was the mother that gave birth to this deformed child. So they saw that as something wrong with the mother, as opposed to understanding how that child was conceived, and that's what the problem was. The problem wasn't with the mother, but this was the origin of the playing the dozens, things of this nature. What has your research shown was the origin of the word MF?
Well, basically, fuck comes from a German word, Fuka,
mm-hmm.
which means with a big.
Say it again. You're breaking up. It comes from the word "fuker," which means what?
To hit with a big stick.
To hit with a big stick. Okay.
Okay.
And
origins of the framework of rape. That's why they would remember. Caveman would hit the woman over the head and drag her in the cave by the hair.
Right.
Okay. That's actually where I see the word fuck coming.
Mm-hmm.
And as Francis Chris writes, her book, her papers, Ian was the original mother upon which the was built.
Okay, say it again. You said in the ISIS paper, because you were breaking up and getting every other word. You said in the ISIS paper, she wrote what? She wrote what?
Well, she has an essay she has a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
That's entitled "The Europe is the Original."
Okay, the original motherfuckers.
Yeah, in ISIS papers.
Okay.
Okay. Now, as it relates to you can have a physical relationship and bring forward a child with your family. There will be no defects unless there is a defect specifically in that family.
Okay. Hey, we're getting the echo. People in the chat room telling me that they're hearing the echo. Do this, brother. Can you hang up and call right back, and let's see if that clears it up?
Okay.
Okay, just hang up, call right back, okay? All right. Okay, everybody, you listen to the African History Network show. I'm host, Brother Michael Imhotep. Be sure to tune in Thursday. I'm sorry, you listen to the our questions and answers show. Be sure to tune in Thursday, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the African History Network show. Our guest will be Abayomi Ezekwe, editor of the Pan-African Newswire. We'll discuss the history of Syria. We'll also be joined by Brother Dabbles from Dabbles Bead Museum in Detroit. He's going to talk about the 10th annual fundraiser that's taking place this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. At 6559 Grand River Boulevard in Detroit at Dabbles. Okay, and I'll be there. The African History Network will be a vendor there as well. Okay, let's bring Brother Kaba back on. Let's see. Okay, Brother Kaba, is that you? Calling 917. Okay, hold on just a second. Okay, calling 917. We'll come to you just a minute. If you have a quick last-minute question or comment, give us a call, 914-338-1375. Press number 1 key to put you in queue so we can bring you back on the air. Let's bring Brother Kaba back in. Okay, Brother Kaba, you there?
Yes, man, I'm here.
Okay, that sounds better. Okay, go ahead and restate what you were saying about the ISIS papers and the chapter she has on the original motherfuckers.
Yeah, that's in the ISIS papers.
Okay.
And, you know, the Oedipus complex, Oedipus and his mother, that basically is that fundamental concept that the European has. That is matched with another concept known as the Cronus complex, where the father is going to do better than his father, but is going to make sure that his son cannot do better than him. That's basically what's happening in this society together right now today.
Right. Cronus comes from Roman mythology, if I remember, either Greek or Roman mythology. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Well, a combination of both, because Rome doesn't have a mythology. Everything Romans got Greeks. And the Greeks never understood what the Kemites were teaching them. Right.
They learned basically less than 10%, they learned less than 10%, and this is why in Freemasonry the highest level is 33 degrees, because they learned less than 10% of what the ancients taught them. So, yeah. Exactly. Go ahead and wrap that up, and we'll get to a couple of these phone calls here.
Well, the other thing I wanted to say is that within a family, you can have relationships and bring forward children, genetically speaking, and there will be no defect. The only way that there is a defect is if there is a specific defect within that family, and you recycle that defect within the family.
Okay.
You see, so the concept of the dozens came from the fact that they would sell, let's just use the word handicapped or challenged African. Right. And that's where the term cheaper by the dozen comes from. Where they would sell them by the dozens. Like if you were, let's say, mentally challenged or physically challenged, they would not be able to sell you. And that's also where the term, I'm trying to think of, it's called a what dozen, the farmer's dozen, where you get 13 for the price of 12?
Yeah, farmer's dozen, yes. A baker, I think baker's dozen also. I think a baker's dozen is like that. 13 for the price of 12. Baker's dozen.
So that's where that term comes from, where they would put another African in, where you could get 13 for the price of 12.
Right.
And that's where the term cheaper by the dozen comes from. And so, but they didn't sell but I mean, if there was a problem within the African that did not allow them to be what you might want to call, I mean, just a regular human being that could function 100% capacity, then
right.
you had to sell them at a discount, and many times they had a specific price for 12 of them at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But it did not necessarily come from my research as it relates to the inbreeding of Africans, because inbreeding does not bring forward a defective child. That's a taboo in order to make it so that there is no incest within families. But that's a taboo. That's not a scientific fact. That is appropriate to practice because of the nature of what it entails. However, scientifically speaking, inbreeding, incest does not bring forward defective children. That's just a taboo, so that you don't do that. So you go outside of your family to find your mate instead of finding your mate within your family.
Okay. So people historically could do that and not have a defective child. I mean, not have a disabled child or something like that.
That's right. Incest does not breed unless there is a particular defect in that family. And that's when that
trait
cycled and doubled because of the nature of two people with the defect is now giving the defect double to the child.
Right. Okay. All right, I understand that.